Good evening. Welcome to Game Master's Soapbox. I am your host, Jonathan Albin, a game master with almost 50 years of experience behind the screen, sharing with you some of the things that I come across that I stump for off of my soapbox. So today we're going to be talking about miniatures. We're talking about character collections, so to speak, the stuff they gather in the game. We're going to talk about analysis paralysis, taking on the big bads. Story time for Nikos today is something new I'm going to be adding. Area effects in the theater of the mind, how that actually functionally can work. And then my rant today will be on people who use their character sheet as a script for their game. And then, of course, a promotion for the new podcast on evenings at 9 p.m. Alrighty, so let's get started. So if you play role-play games, you are very familiar with the concept of using miniatures in the game, but that has not always been the case, and ironically, it was from miniatures games that Dungeons and Dragons in particular was formed. And the use of and benefit of using miniatures in a game becomes pretty obvious right from the beginning. I want to thank you for being with us tonight, and if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and follow this channel. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. All right, so we are going to be talking about the process of integrating miniatures to the table. Now, the 5th edition and even the 4th edition before of Dungeons and Dragons was very sympathetic to the use of miniatures in roleplay. And one of the major benefits of using miniatures in your game session is it gives a visual representation, visual cues to your players. And as we mentioned yesterday, the action magnets definitely sometimes need something like a miniature to keep them oriented to where they are on the scene and which action they can or should be involved with. But the secondary benefit of miniatures integration is an idea or a concept of motion in the game. Now, I have seen very dynamic roleplay games where they toss out the rules, if you will, for miniatures combat and move the miniatures as they desire for theatrical purposes. But I've also seen people who stay very letter of the law within 5e and still get some at least dynamic movement by taking advantage of the area of influence that a character has, the 5 feet around them, and such like, therefore moving from position to position in the battle fluidly and giving reasons for the characters to be able to do certain actions that they are wanting to describe. So there's the essential benefit of playing by the miniatures rules. There's also the benefit of miniatures integration that you have a sense of scale. If you have a character who is by definition a little person, whether it be a gnome or a peck or something like that, if you've got a small person in the game, then the concept of that little person's movement relative to the others should become apparent simply by the size scale difference. Likewise, a larger creature with more monstrous features, maybe massive size, can move differently or whatever. So the idea of using miniatures to show that really helps with the flow of the game session, episode after episode. It's also a benefit if you wish to use some form of marker. This is one of the things that I did for years when I played, is that I would put a marker next to each model that had already taken its action during a turn to make sure that I got to everybody in a turn, and all of my monsters got turns as well. Because what I found is, as a storyteller, you're so engrossed in what the players are doing that sometimes you forget for the monsters to actually make their actions or take their effects. So it's helpful when you're playing with a miniatures base in the mix that you're able to do that. Now, there's some negatives to miniatures integration. First of all, you have to have an area of play space. Now, in most household games, they play around a tabletop, and therefore you have the center table. But in many of my groups, because we mostly ran theater of the mind, we didn't have to have miniature space, and so we would lounge in the living room furniture, kick back in a big cushy chair, so you didn't have to stay particularly focused on what was going on a tabletop. Therefore, it was always kind of telling that my players would know when they were in for a a tougher time of it when I would say, let's go out and play at the table today, because they knew that meant I was breaking out the models and doing something much more challenging physically, and therefore needed the space orientation mechanism in place for that. Another downside to miniatures is, of course, the cleanup. One of the funniest things is that when you get ready to set up a game, generally you'll have players show up early and will want to help and provide the time to help you get set up. But when the game gets over, everybody's ready to head for the door and head for bed. Generally, you play in the evenings, and so and there's nobody left to help you clean up, and so you either have to ditch it till the morning, in which case you have to do it before the kids get up and around, or you've got to deal with the possibility of the kids actually getting up and messing with them in advance. So that's also one of the downsides of miniatures. Now, I would highly recommend using them because they help with the visualization, and the benefits far outweigh the negatives. But I just wanted to cover that a bit for you.